Hello, everybody, and welcome to a new podcast. My name is JJ Vola. Alongside here is my co-host Cal. Today we have a special episode. We have Jon Simo with us on our podcast. Jon, thank you so much for joining today's podcast. Tell everybody what you do and a brief description of what you do.
Yeah, well, it's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me. I love the studio.
Thank you.
I'm a content ninja, for lack of a better term. And what I mean by that is that I make a little bit of everything. And I think my purpose on this planet is just to make things. And I happen to stumble across the visual medium. So I do everything from photography to documentary filmmaking, to feature filmmaking, to web series, to short form content, to making physical spaces.
Wow.
So yeah, I love making things.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
I'm also an educator and try to give back for all the random things I've learned along the way.
Cool. Well, let's go back into your early life of working. What was some of your first jobs that you had in career-wise, and walk us through the journey of Jon.
Well, my very first job was the paper route, but I think a lot of people cut their teeth with that.
Right.
But I did something a bit more interesting. I was a little bit older, so I had two jobs. The first was I've always had this entrepreneurial spirit, and
Right.
so I learned how to make computers very early. My grandfather was a very smart engineer, and he sort of taught me a lot about computers. So I was like on bulletin board systems. I was like 4 and like learning DOS and executables. So I started building computers for friends because I realized that you could make these like high-end computers for a lot cheaper if you build it yourself. And so through that money, I could never actually afford one of the computers I was building, just almost like the irony of it.
Right.
I afforded my first editing PC through making PCs for others.
Cool. Wow. And what age would you have been then?
12.
12.
Wow.
Okay.
Crazy.
I just learned about computers 2 years ago.
Like my ADHD brain loves solving problems.
Right.
So if I would have like a BIOS error or something, I'd just stay up all night troubleshooting it and be just so frustrated. But then I would maybe solve it at like 7 a.m. with school like 1 hour later, but I get this like massive hit of dopamine from solving the problem. And then sleep wouldn't even matter.
Wow. So building computers at 12 years old now, would there be like a cost associated to that? Like you said that you couldn't necessarily afford the computers before you'd sell it. Would you have to get like a commission first before building the computers? Like how would you structure that at 12 years old?
Yeah, hence the paper route money.
Right.
Like, yeah, it's the seed money.
The first parts that I needed. Sure.
Yeah, true. And then what would you do after that?
In terms of making money?
Well, just like career, like were you still going into the tech industry, like building computers, or did you kind of go into a different road?
Yeah, I did something super nerdy.
We want to hear it.
Sure.
So
Lay it on us.
in high school, I was playing a game called Diablo 2.
Okay.
And I learned that there's this whole ecosystem for selling and purchasing what's called like the Stone of Jordan ring on eBay. So I made an eBay account when I was like 13. And I sort of like figured out this script where it could automatically do, this is so nerdy. It could automatically do magic runs in the Bale level. And so it would like find these rings automatically, like while I was at school. And I would like come home and like have this big stash of rings, and I would sell them on eBay.
Wow.
For like $50, $100. So I made like $5,000 doing that.
No way.
And then with that money, I was able to switch from PCs to buying like a nice Mac, like a Power Mac G5.
Right.
And then they updated the game and made that also. So.
Right. Because they learned people were making money off of it. Yeah, because that's funny. I actually remember one of my buddies in high school. He got really into Minecraft was it Minecraft? Yeah, Minecraft at an early age, and he would go and build, and then he would just get people to rent of being into his space. And of course, all of us were like, "Oh, that's dumb," like right? Like, but you're not realizing he was making a pretty good coin, being like 13, 14 years old in high school, right? So wow, cool. Just to know that information back then, because it just seems like it's easy to know now, right? How automated everything is, but to know everything back then, I'm sure it was quite.
I loved like hacking and tinkering and like just taking things apart, putting them back together. It's always been like a deeply pleasurable for me.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah. Cool.
Was there any other games like that you would kind of, you figured out like a way to like generate money off of sort of thing, or?
No, I mean, I never had the reflexes for like Counter-Strike or anything like that. I know there's like a lot of aim bots and all that, but I sort of moved on to other things. In high school, I'm like, I should probably not be this nerdy.
Right.
Hey, there's nothing wrong with it, you know. Usually those guys are the ones that are actually at the top financially in another 10 to 20 years.
But yeah, and then after that, I was really lucky to go to a great media program in high school. So I went to Unionville High School in Markham, and we had like a full green screen studio and like a whole bunch of cameras and like all the latest Macs. And technically, you had to be in the arts program to attend the school, but also they had people that just lived nearby, and I just happened to live nearby, and so I got very lucky there. And I ended up working for my media teacher, helping him shoot and edit weddings and bar mitzvahs and commercials and things like that. Because I've been doing this since I was like 8, and so not to sound like egotistical or anything, but I was much more advanced than other people in the class, and so I didn't need to learn those things again, and so I could help him on the side, editing his commercials and projects, and I made money.
Wow. No way. And that was a teacher at school.
Yeah.
So he would go out and do these on like weekends, evenings, all that kind of stuff.
When he was like teaching everyone else, I'd be like in the back room editing projects because like I already knew that.
No way. What was the like compensation for that? When we pay you like hourly or per project?
Yeah, man.
That's awesome.
I don't remember. Probably like low.
Yeah. Dude, that's awesome.
For sure.
Jesus.
But it already gets your mind working at a younger age, right? Of how video editing and video software can really come to play into making money. And now look at us, right?
Especially when there's like stakes, right? Like if you're editing someone's wedding or bar mitzvah or a commercial, like you have a client to answer to. If you're editing a school project, it's either like you do good or not, and then move on to the next one.
Sure.
But if you have someone come back to you and say like, I don't like this music selection, you have to learn not only how to be a good creator and be creative, but also sort of pander and be a good communicator. Well, because that becomes very important. And there's definitely some nightmare clients that come along. You have to understand, like, did I do something wrong? Is it just their energy? And like, how do I move through this with professionalism?
Right.
Yeah.
And at that point, you're almost like, I don't even want to do a good job, you know, because some people might be like brutal with you and like giving you really, really bad feedback. And you're like, man, I don't even want to spend any more time on this project because like you don't really like that client or whatever it may be, but you have to power through and make sure that, you know, they get a good result sort of thing. So,
And usually people filming need to be good storytellers too, right? If like they got to see the story and then give it to somebody that's going to edit the project, that person's editing doesn't see the full story or understand how it's supposed to be put together and laid out, right? So, wow, it's really cool. So you after high school, were you still editing?
Yeah, I've been editing since I started. I never stopped.
Right.
After high school, well, first from like an education standpoint, so I made a documentary in high school that won a film festival that got me a scholarship into film school.
no way.
So it's a documentary on World War II that I shot with the other classmates. And so very thankful to get into Toronto Film School because it was quite expensive and I don't think I could have afforded it otherwise.
Wow.
And I did get into a few other schools, but the way that things like Ryerson and U of T work, it's a lot of theory up front, like learning the whys of cinema, not the doing until like year 3 and year 4. The benefit of film school is that you just go straight in. You're just like immediately filming.
And that probably worked to your strengths, being like a very like ADHD person that you like, I learned by doing and trying and failing and all that kind of stuff and whatnot. So
I also really hate authority, and I find it really difficult to have someone teach me. I like to learn by myself.
sure.
And so I like to think that I've learned like 100 times more than I ever did in school.
Yeah. Wow.
But the good thing about being in film school was that I got out of Unionville. I was in Toronto. I met people. I got out of my comfort zone. I learned like how to be an adult.
Right.
Which is an important skill.
Sure. And people learn it all at their own rates, their own purposes, stuff like that too. You know, a lot of people can easily go and read a book and retain all the information. Versus someone like me, I also have, you know, ADHD, and it's tough, right? Because you get through the book and you're like, I don't remember a single word that I read, you know? But yeah, doing it, practicing it, and then learn how to get better, for sure.
Yeah.
It's a great way of learning too, right? Cool. And then what did you get into after? So was the scholarship, was it completely paid for?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
And how long was that course for?
That was 2 years straight.
Cool.
Yeah.
And what's something that you can expect from learning from that? Was it Toronto Film?
Toronto Film School.
Yeah.
Personally, I didn't enjoy it.
Okay.
I liked the experience, like I talked about earlier, about like getting out of a small town and getting to Toronto. But from a learning perspective, I felt it was very unbalanced, and there are people from all over. Right? So some people went to film school thinking, I want to be Steven Spielberg. I don't know anything about making movies or editing or cameras. They just had like the hype. And then other people like me had been doing this for almost like 10 years at this point. So when they're teaching to the lowest common denominator, you feel very bored, sort of like antsy, but like, move on, come on, let's go.
Oh, so you felt so far more advanced to what they were teaching. Right.
So I got quite bored, and also the fact that a lot of the teachers, they are in the industry themselves, which you think would be good. But teaching is a very, very particular skill. And when you don't have a background as a teacher and you're just like a producer or a DP, you might not have that skill. And it comes across very challenging to the students because there's so many times when we'd be learning something and they would just be like, why don't you understand this? Like, to them, it's such common knowledge, but to us who don't know it yet, they didn't have a proper vernacular to teach us because they just didn't have the background.
Interesting. Cool.
Never really thought about that,
Yeah.
how if someone's really good at something and they're just really good at it, but actually teaching somebody else how to do that the way that they understand it, is two different things. Like, I mean, to find a really good teacher that can also, that's like a top, producer in the industry sort of thing is pretty neat. So, wow. Okay. So that made it pretty challenging for you throughout like film school. Were you able to finish it or?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I finished it.
Awesome.
And I got some cool projects out of it. I met a lot of friends from that. And, I still like honed my craft the entire time. Like, I never stopped making.
Sure. And what kind of projects would you work on when you were in film school?
Short films, documentaries, music videos, commercials, things like that.
Okay.
There was no short form content, so everything was like 3 to 30 minutes. Right. It's a whole different world now, but
sure.
Yeah.
But we were still learning on film, which I thought was very bizarre because I could already see the future that we're like going to digital like so soon. And to be in this back room, like changing a film mag with this like mini tent because you have to do it in complete darkness, and you're like blindfolded. You're like, this is dumb. Like, why do we have to just pay homage to like the old people? I want to move on to the new tech. Like, this is where it's all going.
Sure.
Yeah, true.
So it just felt like a little bit slow. And that's why I feel a little bit iffy about recommending film school to people because like it's so dependent on the person. If you need to push yourself to get out there, meet people and make friends and relationships, like it's amazing for that. If you're not a classical learner and you learn better on your own, then I would advise to just take that money and like put it into equipment, put it into like taking online master classes, put it into a project, and just like keep making. You'll learn a lot more that way.
And even now too, with like how much more resources we have available today, like even me learning how to edit and all that kind of stuff in DaVinci, CapCut, all that kind of stuff. But the cool part is I just go to YouTube and I watch a 10-minute video. I know it's, but you learn a lot in that 10-minute, or you watch several of those videos within an hour. You're going to get the idea of that particular thing that you need to learn versus you might go to school. I'd say you're not going to learn anything, but there's a lot of stuff you may already know, which from your example kind of seems like it, right?
That's what I think is both amazing and a little bit of a blind spot for how you can learn these days. Because we have access to literally all of human history's information in our pocket, which sounds like the craziest thought ever, like 50 years ago. You can access anything on this device. The problem with that is that if you don't know what to access or why, you can feel very lost. So there's this like one-sided nature of YouTube learning where the algorithm guides you based on your last click, and the video might not be exactly enough for you to learn. It's like, it's not a two-way mentorship program. It's simply one way. There's almost no way to interact with the person teaching you. I think that is vital for learning, is to have that interaction. So unless you know how to peruse YouTube and online platforms, I think it's a lot of like spray and pray learning, which can make you feel scattered and confused.
Right. I see what you're saying. You get too much information that's pretty broad.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Versus taking the proper step by step.
That's why even like working on a specific project and looking up a specific thing, like editing this podcast in DaVinci, like having something very specific to look up and then putting it right into action is super helpful. But like you said, I mean, people go online and like, what are 10 ways I can make money doing videography and editing, right? Gives you 10 ideas, and then you dive deeper into that. And like, man, I'm like, I don't even know where to start, right? So
Yeah, true.
it's so important, definitely to have that back and forth. So,
And we're also in a culture right now where it's super hard to ask for feedback and advice. I mean, the most feedback I see on Instagram posts are like the fire emoji. Like, I think people are afraid to give critical feedback because we have this whole ideology of like being liked versus not liked, and everyone's trying to be the best version of themselves online. And I always try to give critical feedback. Not everyone's always open to it, but I feel like you need more people that are sort of assholes in that way, like kind assholes. It's like, here's why it didn't work and here's how to get better. There's nothing against who you are as a person, simply to help you.
Yeah, just improve.
Sure.
Yeah. Because, I mean, we're on our 16th episode up until John came up and helped fix our camera. We didn't know anything. But, I mean, it's so true. I mean, at the end of the day, there's a good way and a bad way of going about saying, hey, you can improve. There's nothing wrong with saying it, but the person is going to take that negative criticism. I tell Cal all the time, like, a bad comment's not necessarily a bad comment, right? It's looking the positive out of it and how to improve. Now, what if, obviously, with you being in film editing, it sounds like, obviously, since high school, what have been some of your biggest jobs or some of your biggest accomplishments in film?
I'd say one thing that's really cool off the top was I very quickly out of film school turned around and started teaching. Because I had a bad experience at film school with teaching, I sort of landed in this role where I could teach kids filmmaking. And that was like an easy entry point for me to not have a lot of pressure from a teaching standpoint. And I'd actually stayed friends with my grade 7 teacher, who I found out in high school, he also was doing the wedding and bar mitzvah thing as a side gig. And so he hired me to do weddings and bar mitzvahs as well. And then he started this company called The Director's Cut, in which he taught kids at summer camp and after school programs. So I taught kids short filmmaking, music filmmaking, claymation, and one more, I think. Wow. And that was amazing because you really have to be calm, kind, like slow. And if I just sat some kid down and started teaching them like advanced keyframing in After Effects, their eyes would glaze over.
Right.
But if you make it fun and exhilarating and talk from like such a high level perspective, it helps you understand what you're doing as well. Because to be able to fully teach something, you have to know it so simply that you can tell your grandmother and she will understand it. That's how you properly know something, in my opinion.
Wow. When you think of that, like that's it's so true. I mean, teaching anything to like even a young kid today, like how, like you said, like being patient, taking your time, and giving them like really, this is the reason why we're doing it. Like this isn't how it needs to be done, but this is the reason why we take our time and kind of go through, the process of really understanding these concepts and whatnot. So, how long did you do that for? Like,
I did that for 3 years.
Okay.
And eventually I got a little bit tired about teaching kids because I don't like wrangling children. And there'd be the odd classroom where it's just like, there's a kid standing on the desk, just like screaming. I'm like, what do I do?
Right. Yeah.
Just like pull them down.
Come here, Billy.
And there's like a fine line between like being the kid's friend and like being an adult. And if you're too much of their friend, they will just like walk all over you.
Sure.
Because obviously it sounds like it was all in person, like none of it was online.
No, it's all in person.
Okay.
Yeah.
I see.
Yeah. So I basically had like a slew of the white MacBooks, and then we had a slew of cameras. And it was so funny teaching kids claymation because for some reason, those were the youngest kids. They were like the 6-year-olds. So they mostly just got hyped over playing with clay. Right now. So they'd be doing the process, and it's super tedious to do stop motion. It's 1 frame at a time, 24 frames per second. So for a kid, even to make something that's like 5 seconds is like an effort. So when we're doing the parent film festival at the end of the week, there'd be these 5-second films with like a thing to like burp, and then it'd be like 3 minutes of credits just to like stretch it out.
Right.
Because it gave you a 5-second film. The parents would be like, I paid how much for this?
Yeah.
I said, but the kids were so hyped to see that photos could be turned into motion and that the thing that they literally moved turned into a small story. Like,
Right.
they got so hyped and that translated to my enjoyment too. And I think that's really why I've stuck with teaching, is because of that early experience of teaching kids and really like distilling it down to the fun components and the simple.
Sure.
Right. And I even remember my sister doing that too. Like I'd always bust in her door. She'd be taking pictures of I think she started with stick people, but like, yeah, it was just a camera, propped it up on a wall, and then she had to tape things along, and then I'm just like, as I'm 4 years younger than her at that time, like, what are you doing? And then when she showed me the finished project, like the project or whatever, it's actually pretty cool. I was like, oh wow, you made that in your own room, you know?
And
yeah.
I have a lot of nostalgia for those days too. In a way, I'm very envious for creators now and kids these days, because like you literally have an amazing quality device in your pocket. You can film anything at all times.
Right.
And back when I was growing up, it would be my dad's like $100 camcorder, and then to edit together a story, I'd have to hook up 2 VCRs together and try to time out hitting record on the one that was playing. And there'd also be this like little like blip cut that I couldn't quite get. And that just felt so archaic to me. So the fact that you can like literally make a movie with your phone now is just mind blowing to me.
Right. Yeah.
I think we take it for granted, how easy things are now and how difficult it was like back in the day, like you were talking about actual film that you guys were doing and like in film school, right? Like how far we've come and where we're at today. So that's awesome. And so I guess after the camps, did you go out on your own after that and you started doing like freelance work? Or?
Yeah, I moved to Toronto when I was 21,
Okay.
which my parents thought was a bit too early, but I just wanted to like get out of there and just like have an adventure. So I found a place in Toronto that was too expensive for me. And I have a knack of doing that, like fake it till you make it. So a friend, my best friend at the time, we got this like epic loft that was like way too expensive. And we're like, we can just figure it out. We'll figure it out with the actual no plan.
Yeah.
But that pushed us to really figure it out, because like, oh crap, we like have to pay rent obviously and feed ourselves. So because it was such a unique looking loft, we turned it into a photo studio that we rent out for money.
Cool.
And that became its own side business, where we actually made like one of the most popular photo studios in Toronto for quite some time. Yeah, it's called V1 Studio.
Is it still active today? Like
it eventually became my neon studio, and then I shut that down. It was around for almost 10 years.
Jeez. How much was the rent?
The rent was $2,100.
$2,100. And that was back.
This is in 2009.
Okay. Yeah. It's a lot.
And I had no money.
Yeah.
Like, actually no money.
Yeah. It's like just after a recession too.
And that's like back in the day, they're like, do you have first and last? Yeah, I think we got it, or we can get it, like
I sold my Xbox, I sold my Dreamcast, I sold my BMX bike, so I sold a bunch of stuff just to make first and last. Figured it out.
all for the dream.
Wow.
Love that.
And because I was now downtown, it was a lot easier to create content all the time, because for me, locations are very important for my creativity. Whenever I go to a new location, it's a whole new world of creating. So I'd never shot with skyscrapers or like trains or this amount of people and lights and neon signage and all that. I was in small town Unionville, which is like a bunch of cookie cutter houses. So I was so inspired living in Toronto for the first time, and I just kept creating nonstop. I was shooting on like a mini DV cam at the time, and then eventually I moved on to the Canon 7D. That was my first like proper camera, and that blew my mind, because you could all of a sudden have depth of field and this amazing cinematic look to it. So I did the freelance thing once I had that camera. So this is around 2008, 2009. And I started by shooting club videos. In the beginning, I got paid in vodka.
Nice.
Like, they would just say, come on out to the club, you'll get bottles. And I wouldn't want to get wasted and shoot anyway, so it's just like not the best payment.
Right.
But I learned how to create like snappy edits. Like everything was like cut to the music. I learned how to basically shoot music videos because there was no dialogue necessary. It's just like make this club look dope. And I love that because they never had any notes. They just said like, do whatever you want, just make it look cool.
Right.
And at the time, because I was shooting on the Canon 7D, no one knew that they could do video. So most of the footage is people just being like waiting for me to take the photo. Like, it's video. And like they can never hear me. So just like cutting around a bunch of like tableau people.
What's that thing, the trending thing that happened a while back where everyone would stop in motion or whatever? What was it called?
Freeze or whatever.
Yeah.
Stop motion. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Because I kept making that, eventually I transcended getting paid in vodka. I started getting paid in actual money, which was helpful.
Yeah.
Because you can't pay the bills with.
Yeah. They're like, man, I got a lot of alcohol. Who wants to come over and drink his alcohol?
Yeah. Would they give you the full bottle, or was it just like
Like I could have some at the club.
I see.
Oh,
Right.
Yeah.
So like I could have it there and then.
Gotcha.
Wow.
That's it. Yeah. And then you'd be like, I'm good.
Yeah.
Because I made things that were probably better than they expected, I started to get our notice, and I started to get other clubs saying, hey, we'd like you to come in. And at that point, I'm like, okay, I'm not going to get paid in vodka though. Like, can you pay me in money?
Mm-hmm.
And so that turned into like, okay, $150 a night, $250 a night, $500 a night. And then because it has such a similar style to music videos, I jumped from that to music videos. And now it's like, okay, the budget's $2,500, the budget's $5,000, the budget's $10,000. So I went from these club videos to shooting hip hop music videos, which is very like eye-opening to the process. They're very like, the ones I was on anyway were very like rambunctious, but like interesting. And I met a lot of interesting people. And I was just like figuring it all out as I went. Like, how do you figure out hip hop lighting, and how do you make like a snappy edit? How do you have someone moving in slow motion, but the lyrics are still happening at normal speed? All these cool things. I just like in this massive experimental mode in my career, which is like trying everything.
Wow.
And my first big like payday was actually from the very first like viral video I ever shot. So this is in 2009, 2010. There's this crazy electrical storm in Toronto, if you guys remember it, but it was like world-ending lighting, just like non-stop for hours.
Really? Okay.
And so I immediately like got outside, started filming it, just like me, the camera, an umbrella, and just like capturing as much as I could. And then I stayed up all night editing and released it the next day, and it just went like super viral. Like all the news broadcasts picked it up. It got 10 million views on Vimeo. Which, like, I don't even think YouTube was like a thing. Well, like it was, but like no one was really using it.
Yeah.
And the way that I got a big payday is that a Japanese television station purchased the rights to it to play on their network. And I got $10,000 for that,
No way.
Wow.
which is how I bought my first motorcycle.
Love that. Yes.
I like could barely pay rent. I get 10,000. I'm like, all right, I'm gonna buy an expensive motorcycle, right?
Something
Because I need this. I don't need food or clothes.
Right. Yeah.
We get the plane and I'll save money.
Yeah, I made it make sense in my mind.
Sure.
Right.
That's what we all do.
Yeah.
I love that.
Like, wow. So that was your first big break, and then what were some big accomplishments after that?
So I then got a job at an actual production agency.
Okay.
It's called The Biz Media, and we started in a small loft in Toronto, and then there was like 4 of us. And it was very like startup mentality, startup energy, which is super cool. I love that. And we grew very quickly, and we ballooned up to like 20 people and had like the top floor of like a Toronto office building. It was like very expensive.
Okay.
And I worked there for 3 years, and my role essentially was like the cool editor, which I felt weird about because someone would like do an edit, and then I would just like take it from them and like add style to it. And they'd be like, well, I want to add this style. Can you though?
Yeah. Right.
So I would just like make it snazzy and cool and color grade it, get it out. And so I was sort of like shooter, editor, conceptualizer at this company.
So you kind of put your touch on it. That just like really elevated the video sort of thing where the client.
Try to, yeah.
Well,
Well, this is where I learned a ton about working with brands, because we worked with Coca-Cola and Samsung and Rogers and the Raptors and like every brand under the sun. We work with them. And I learned so much about what it takes to work with a brand and how intense and complicated it can be and how much politics are involved with brand work. from the fact of like that one shot of the Coca-Cola logo, that's not exactly Coke Red. Could you just change that to Coke Red? And it's like, that's red. What's Coke Red? Like,
Right.
and things like that. You just learn that you have to just say, okay, sure, yeah, no problem. I'd love to change that. Slight.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Wow. The fine details.
Yeah.
And the problem is someone's gonna watch that video 1,000 times over before it's released, anyways, right? So, yeah.
So this is at like the most adult learning phase of my career, just like how to work with brands, how to be on set.
Wow. Now, what are you doing today? Just to kind of fast forward into today's life, like what do you got going on now?
Well, yeah. So to get there, I just have to go back.
Oh, yeah.
Slightly. So that production company ended up collapsing under its own weight.
Oh,
We like grew way too quickly, and then the whole company like. I was pretty nervous to be fired. I'd never been fired before. It wasn't because I did bad work, it was just because they couldn't sustain all the clients. So then I'm back to like not having regular income. I still have this expensive loft. Now and I was really, really scared because I had so much consistent work and I had to go back to freelancing. And so for a couple years, it was very difficult because there was such competition and I hadn't made a name for myself yet. I didn't really have a style. It was almost to my own detriment that I was wearing too many hats where like I could do photography, I could do a music video, I could do a documentary. At that time, people want the stills person, the doc person, the music video person. I was like all over the place. I was like almost unhireable for a while.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Oh.
And it wasn't until that I defined my style as not about one specific theme or type of content, more so like how I make that, which ended up becoming like impossible visuals, where a lot of my visuals are just like a little bit outside of reality from either like a color perspective, a conceptual perspective, or just like there's something about that feels like otherworldly. And that ended up becoming my style. So I could be hired now for music videos and docs and everything because people understood what they would be getting.
Okay.
So it took a couple years of like extreme hardship to be able to get to a place where I started to make money again
Mm-hmm.
and to make good budgets and to be recognized as a creator who was not just like a cameraman for hire, but also someone that had a lot of ideas. So I started fully freelancing and was doing a lot of the same big branded things. Started working for BMW and doing a lot of car content. And really fell in love with that. And now car content's like one of my mainstays. But I never stopped experimenting. So I was always just like trying new things. So for a while, I wanted to become a commercial, like a high-end cinematographer. So I shot a couple feature films, and then I hated that.
Right.
And then I wanted to be a director, so I like wrote and directed my own series for CBC, and just like didn't quite like that. And then I fell into like short form content and like education and automotive and like all these fun things. And that's what I've been doing for the last 3 years, pretty much.
Yeah, because you do have a great following, from what I saw. Right, it was in the 200.
It's 100 on Instagram now.
Wow.
But at the end of the day, that's simply like a vanity metric.
Yeah.
In my opinion. Like when I went from 5 to 15,000, like that was a pretty big change. But from 15 to 100, like not that much changed. Like you can't rely on the numbers to make you money.
Right.
Like sure, a couple more companies reach out saying, hey, would you like this free $100 microphone? But from like a brand perspective, it's really more about the work than the numbers now.
Sure. I see. Okay. And then a lot of these brands that you work with, so going from that job to freelancing to figuring out what your style was and whatnot, getting those brands and businesses to work with you, like would you do outreach or would you kind of send them like samples of what you were doing or like networking with them? How did you get those clients?
Yeah. So how I did in the beginning is what I tell a lot of creators. The best way to get the work that you want to be doing is simply by doing it. So before, like, there's no such thing as waiting for the client or like waiting for automotive. If you don't have a single automotive piece of content on your feed, like, why would they ever hire you? You have to make it before you get paid for it.
Right.
And that's exactly what I did. Like, I shot my first car shot. It was this truck that I borrowed from a buddy, like under the Milky Way, and BMW saw that. It's like, we want exactly this, but like for our brand.
Cool.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
And that helps brands like envision, you know, kind of what you could do for them. Or, I mean, you guys like,
'Cause these brands are not creatives, and not to like discount from what they do, but like they're not the idea generators.
Mhm.
They're looking to be told what you can do for them, like what ideas you can deliver. And so if you already have something that they don't know, like if they inherently look at your concept like, I like that, I want that, then that's your foot through the door. But if you don't have anything that they like, it's going to be such a hard uphill battle to sell them on what you do, because you have to build trust. But the first step to building trust is to showcase that you can do what it is that they want.
okay. Got it.
Probably makes it a lot easier too. From I want it this way, like you did it, but with this filming, like in a sense of like how you're gonna perform that to editing or make it so like it's your style.
Yeah.
They like your style, right? And now you just gotta take their footage and make your style, right? So wow,
Yeah.
this makes so much sense.
The first BMW job I did was very in line with that Milky Way shot I got at the truck. They said, we want you to just like take our new BMW X3 and like do something adventurous with the stars involved. Just like go for it.
Wow. That's fun.
They gave me the car for a week. And
Yeah.
I went up to Manitoulin Island and shot with I had one camera assistant, which is very difficult to shoot car.
Sure.
And I had to also be in it. Like it was at the beginning of these like hybrid influencer campaigns. So for anything that I had to shoot of the car, he like wore my clothing, so that he was like, look close enough like me in the wide shots, but wasn't me because I was shooting it.
Right. Cool.
Things like that.
Wow.
You kind of remind me of like Casey Neistat a little bit. You know, I don't know those vibes. Do you like Casey at all?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
think he's incredible.
Sick. Just rolling on the bike. You had a motorcycle that you rolled up on today.
I know.
I was like,
wow.
dude, Casey is showing up right now. Super cool,
It
man.
was either gonna be the bike, my electric longboard, or this funny little car that I have.
What's the car?
It's a Scion IQ.
Okay.
My brother has like modified it to look like an overlander, which is like sort of a joke because like obviously I can't do that.
Right. Oh, cool.
You guys show us a picture.
Yeah.
After it.
Yeah.
Put it here. Put it here.
Pop it right there. That's awesome. Wow. So what? I know we're gonna finish the podcast soon, but just a couple questions we do like to ask every guest. Like, if you could tell yourself 20-year-old advice, what would it be?
I would tell them or tell him that imposter syndrome will never last, and to not let yourself get down from these seasons of creativity. What I mean by that is that at multiple points in my career, I thought that my creativity had peaked and that I was like the best work was behind me. And I firmly believe that once you're creative, whether you're born with it or foster it or learn it or just something sparks it, it'll never ever go away. But there's always going to be these dips, these peaks and valleys of creativity. And when I was in the valleys, it became very depressing. I thought that just like that was it. But it always comes back. You just have to find that new thing that'll inspire you. And that to me is learning something new because you immediately want to go out and try it. It's finding a new location, or it's just like collaborating. Those are like the three things that always spark creativity. And that's one thing that I wish I knew when I was 20 is that it's easy. It's easy as long as you have a good attitude, never stop learning, and always be creative. But like, don't be hard on yourself for feeling this way. And also, that imposter syndrome is good. Like, it just means that you're on the right track.
Sure. Wow, that's great.
Fake it till you make it.
Yeah.
There were so many jobs that I shouldn't have been on that I like lied through my teeth that I could do a certain thing.
Yeah.
I love
Like,
that.
oh crap, well, and I have to like really do it.
Yeah.
Like this one job, Walmart hired me to do 360 photos of like all their decor for back to school. I had never done 360 photos before. This was like way before 360 cameras. So I'm like, and the shoot was in 3 days. Like, all right, I for sure do this. I for sure do this. And so I shot a test shot in my living room and they're like, oh, this looks amazing. But like, I didn't really know how to do it. I was like watching YouTube while doing it, while like emailing the final thing.
Yeah.
And then I learned and I accomplished it and I got paid, and they never knew, thankfully, until now. But
Yeah.
that happens time and time again. It's just like that kind of pressure makes diamonds, right? And so I think that's been a great way that pushed me to learn, because unless you have somebody creating a container for creatives, creativity is just like exploding everywhere to the ether. Once it's contained into you have to do this thing or you have to create within this box, that's when like you really get to focus and funnel your energy.
Wow, and that's so true because we're learning that right now. So now, what goals do you have for the next 5 to 10 years for yourself?
I want to be telling more interesting stories. I think storytelling is one of my favorite things in the world, and I think it's almost like a lost art. That old adage of like the campfire storyteller. There'd always be that one person that would just tell a riveting story around the campfire, and everyone's glued, right?
Yeah.
But that has felt like it's dying because we're all just consuming content that's like 5 seconds long and just is designed to make you feel dopamine rather than like an emotional response. And so I want to get back to making these like emotional stories.
Wow.
And I want to make them still in the format of what people are using. So I'm working on some short form documentaries for shot in vertical. I'm working on one that's the dark side of being a creator. I'm working on one that's the sort of like science and belief of losing a pet. All these things are like meaningful to me, that I want to make people feel something rather than just like, here's a cool 360 shot.
Wow.
So I'm basically like banking as much information as I can from a storytelling and learning perspective to eventually have the time, freedom, and flexibility to tell stories that are meaningful to me.
Sure.
Wow.
Now, is anyone like sponsoring these, John, or are you kind of like, is there anyone else involved with this kind of financially, or these are just projects that you're working on, and then you also have paying gigs sort of thing, or?
At this point, I'm very thankful to have been sponsored by a good amount of brands, and so I have formed relationships with them where I can pitch them jobs like this. So if there's a new Panasonic camera coming out, I could pitch them one of my short form docs to sort of showcase their new tech while also getting what I want to do. And I work a lot with Insta360, with Panasonic, and a few other brands. And so they've been all super nice about just fostering my ideas and creativity. But I had to put in the work to get to this point.
Sure. And it seems like you've done such a great job of becoming the best at what you do. And now these brands, when you ask for something, they're, heck yeah, John, like we'll support you whenever you want to do and all that kind of stuff. So it's incredible, man.
To anyone watching, it's not hard to work with the brand. They seem hard, and that's what stops people from even trying. The way that I work with Insta360 is that I bought their camera. I started making cool shit with it that was outside of the box. And I got their attention very, very quickly. And then I just jumped on a campaign with them. Okay, you guys like what I'm doing? Here's what you can get with some money. And if you just find a way to get in front of them, that's not just simply like getting in their DMs, like start a conversation, move to email as quickly as possible, have a pitch ready for what you can make, start small and simple and not super cost prohibitive to them. And after 1 or 2 campaigns, you'll have like an ongoing relationship with a brand that you love. And like, doesn't have to be scary. Like that brand might even be Lamborghini for you, or it might be Virgin Atlantic, or just like anything you can think of. As long as you can find a way to get in front of them with your specific creativity, it's an easy in.
Sure.
Wow.
Creating value for them, giving them kind of jab, and then be like, hey, can you help me out? I got a really cool project we're working on.
Just making sure it's unique too. Like if you're making what everyone else is making, then you're just going to be another cog, but making sure that's your unique style.
Right. Incredible.
Wow. I love it. Well, thank you so much, John, for being a part of today's podcast. I look forward to rewatching it over and over again. Just quickly, if anybody wanted to follow you or go to your website, what is that?
Yeah, so it's Jon Simo, Simo, on all platforms, jonsimo.com, Jon Simo on Instagram. And I have an educational platform called Simo Students right now where I teach. And I also have a Discord community. I know that Discord's getting a lot more popular. And so the Discord's called the Creator Community. There's around 3,000 people in there right now. It's a great place to like connect with other creatives and learn. And I'm on there all the time.
Wow.
So yeah, come say hi. All the links can be found on my Instagram and on the website.
Cool.
Now your training course, what is it like? What are the prices kind of like for like kind of a starter course, or what are some of the courses that you offer on there?
Yeah, so it's $20 a month and you get access to everything.
Oh wow.
It's just ongoing.
Okay.
And then if you want to do like one-on-ones with me, I do 30 and 60-minute creative consults. And that's where I'm like, all right, let's get into this. Like, let me help you.
Yeah.
I get so hyped on that too, because at the end of the call, whoa, like I learned a crap ton.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm using AI to like make notes and everything. Like I use AI for so many things.
For sure.
So they get this like big spreadsheet of like everything we talked about, like bullet points. And
I love that.
there's some crazy AI stuff I need to talk to you guys about after like podcasting.
Yeah. I feel like I gotta ask you more questions.
Yeah.
Wow, we're gonna end today's podcast. Again, I want to say a huge thank you, Jon, for being a part of today's podcast. And for anyone who's listening, watching, be sure to hit that like button. Also hit subscribe so you don't miss out on any future videos. Thank you again to everyone who's watching, and be sure to leave a comment of any careers that you would like to see ongoing as we're trying to find more and more guests. Thank you again, everyone watching. We'll see you in the next podcast.
Yes.
Holy God.
Unreal. You got to start a podcast.